Have you ever wondered why certain people keep showing up in your life? Sometimes as lovers, sometimes as friends, or even as recurring conflicts. It feels like a mysterious pattern you can't escape, like your heart is stuck on repeat, drawn to the same faces, the same stories, the same emotional highs and lows. But what if these patterns aren't random? What if they are messages from deep within your psyche, revealing parts of yourself you've yet to understand? Drawing on the profound insights of Carl Jung, we'll uncover why you attract the same types of people over and over, and how this unconscious dance holds the key to your own personal growth and wholeness. Get ready to explore the hidden forces shaping your relationships and discover how to break free from the cycle to create the love and connection you truly deserve. Have you ever noticed that no matter how different people seem at first, you end up in the same kind of relationship over and over again? Maybe it's the controlling partner, the emotionally unavailable friend, or the person who constantly needs saving. You think this time will be different, but the story somehow repeats itself. This frustrating loop isn't random, and according to Carl Jung, it's not just bad luck or poor choices. It's your unconscious mind pulling the strings. Jung believed that much of our behavior is driven by the unconscious, the part of our mind we're not even aware of. We like to think we're choosing our partners and friends with full awareness, but in reality, we're often guided by old emotional patterns, wounds, and hidden parts of ourselves. Until we bring these unconscious elements to light, we are doomed to repeat them. Jung put it simply, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let's break this down. Think of your unconscious as a storage room where you've shoved everything you didn't want to deal with. Fears, disappointments, desires, and even parts of yourself you were told weren't acceptable. Over time, you forget what's even in there, but those buried parts don't stay silent. They find their way out, not through your thoughts, but through your relationships. The people you attract are like mirrors reflecting back what's hidden inside you. This is why the same emotional patterns keep coming up in different forms. You might meet someone who seems completely new and refreshing, but a few months in, you're feeling the same pain, the same confusion. Why? Because the relationship is touching an old wound, probably from childhood. Maybe you had a parent who was emotionally distant, and now you keep falling for people who can't give you affection. Or perhaps you were made to feel responsible for others' happiness, and now you keep attracting people who need fixing. Jung saw these patterns as symbolic. Your unconscious is trying to get your attention by showing you, again and again, what needs healing. The people you attract aren't accidents, they are messages. But we often don't see it that way. We get frustrated, blame others, or blame ourselves. We try to change our external world without understanding the internal one. So we change partners, jobs, or friend groups, only to end up in the same emotional mess. Here's where it gets deeper. Jung said that these repeating patterns are invitations to grow. The pain is not a punishment, but a signal. Your psyche is trying to wake you up to something inside you that needs attention. Until you recognize the pattern and understand where it comes from, it will keep showing up in different disguises, like a dream you keep having until you finally get the message. What makes this more powerful is realizing that you are not broken or cursed. You are simply being asked to look inward. When you stop seeing repeated patterns as failures and start seeing them as information, everything shifts. The same situations now become opportunities to understand yourself. This is the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming your true self, by integrating all the parts of who you are, especially the ones you've hidden. So the question isn't, why do I attract the same people? The real question is, what part of me is calling them in? What wound, what belief, what fear is creating this magnetic pull? And once you see that clearly, the pattern starts to lose its power. You begin to choose differently, not out of fear, not out of habit, but out of awareness. This is not easy work. It takes courage to look at yourself honestly, but the reward is freedom. Freedom from cycles that no longer serve you. Freedom to form relationships based on truth, not trauma. And most importantly, freedom to become who you were always meant to be, conscious, whole, and fully alive. You're not stuck. You're just being invited to wake up. The pattern isn't your prison, it's your path. Carl Jung, one of the most influential figures in modern psychology, believed that human beings are not just rational minds, walking through life making logical decisions. Instead, he saw the human psyche as a deep and mysterious world, filled with layers, some of which we are aware of, and others that remain hidden beneath our conscious awareness. These hidden layers, what Jung called the unconscious, are not just private storage spaces for our forgotten memories or repressed emotions. They are active forces that shape our thoughts, behaviors, and, most importantly, our relationships. To Jung, every person we meet becomes a mirror. We may think we are just getting to know someone else, but in truth, we are often looking at reflections of our own inner world. This is what he meant when he said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." It's a bold idea, one that suggests the people we attract and react to are not random. They are mirrors showing us what lies within our own psyche. So when you keep attracting the same kind of person, especially someone who brings up emotional triggers or old wounds, it's worth asking, what are they reflecting? Are they showing you an unhealed wound, a forgotten need, or a hidden belief you still carry? According to Jung, the outer world is shaped by the inner one. Our reality is filtered through the lens of our psyche, and what we haven't yet faced within ourselves often shows up through other people. Jung also introduced the idea of the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious is made up of your unique experiences, memories, and feelings that you've repressed or forgotten. But the collective unconscious goes even deeper. It's a shared layer of the human mind that holds universal patterns and symbols, called archetypes. These archetypes influence how we see others and how we expect relationships to unfold. So you're not just repeating personal patterns, you're often acting out ancient, unconscious roles that have been part of human behavior for centuries. Let's say you often find yourself in relationships where you feel abandoned. From a Jungian perspective, this isn't just about bad luck in love. The people you attract may be mirroring a deeper part of your psyche that holds a fear of abandonment, perhaps a wound from early childhood, or even an archetypal fear rooted in the human experience. These mirrors give us the chance to see the truth about ourselves, not just intellectually, but emotionally and spiritually. And here's the most fascinating part. Jung believed that this mirroring is essential for psychological growth. Relationships are not just about happiness or companionship. They are spiritual arenas where we come face to face with ourselves. That's why love can be so beautiful but also so painful. When someone mirrors your beauty, it feels magical. But when they reflect your wounds, it feels like betrayal. In both cases, the relationship is revealing something vital about you. This mirror effect can be uncomfortable, especially when it shows us something we don't want to see. Our insecurities, our fears, or our control issues. But Jung encouraged us not to look away. Instead, he taught that by facing what we see in the mirror of the other, we can reclaim lost parts of ourselves. This is what he meant by shadow work, the process of exploring and integrating the hidden aspects of our personality. Ultimately, Jung's view of the psyche is deeply empowering. If every person we attract is a mirror, then we are not helpless. We are not stuck in endless cycles without meaning. We are constantly being given chances to learn, grow, and awaken. Each relationship becomes an opportunity to see ourselves more clearly, to heal what hurts, and to become more whole. So when you meet someone who stirs something deep in you, good or bad, pause before you react. Ask yourself, what are they showing me about myself? That moment of reflection could be the beginning of profound transformation. Because in Jung's world, the outer world is never just about other people. It's always, in some way, about you. Deep inside each of us lives a hidden world we rarely acknowledge. A world made up of traits, emotions, desires, and impulses we've rejected, denied, or buried. Carl Jung called this realm the shadow. It's not evil or dangerous by nature, but it is unconscious. And what we refuse to face within ourselves doesn't just disappear, it grows stronger, influencing our behaviors, our choices, and yes, even the people we attract. Jung believed that everyone has a shadow. It forms during childhood, as we begin learning what is acceptable and what is not. Maybe we were told to be quiet when we were naturally outspoken, or we learned to hide our sensitivity because it was labeled weak. Over time, we push these qualities out of our conscious identity and into the unconscious. We build a persona, the social mask we wear to fit in, and everything that doesn't fit this mask gets cast into the shadow. But here's the twist. The shadow doesn't stay quiet. It seeks expression. And one of the most powerful ways it does this is by pulling certain people into our lives. People who carry the very traits we've disowned in ourselves. Ever notice how you're inexplicably drawn to someone who is bold, reckless, or deeply emotional? They may be irritating, intoxicating, or even triggering. That's not just attraction, that's your shadow calling. You see, the shadow contains both negative and positive traits. Not just anger, jealousy, or manipulation, but also your buried creativity, passion, sensuality, and confidence. These are parts of yourself you might have feared or felt unworthy of expressing. When you repress them, you unconsciously seek them in others. That's why someone with qualities you've disowned often feels magnetic. They're living a part of you that you've lost touch with. Jung explained that we are psychologically drawn to our shadow in others because at some level, we want to become whole. We're not just seeking love or friendship, we're seeking to reclaim the lost parts of our soul. But because this process is unconscious, it often causes chaos. Instead of integration, we get obsession, conflict, and confusion. Relationships become intense, dramatic, and emotionally charged. Not because something is wrong, but because something deep is trying to be seen. Think about a toxic pattern you've experienced repeatedly. Perhaps you always fall for emotionally unavailable people, or you attract those who manipulate or control. On the surface, it seems like bad luck, but Jung would ask, what part of you is drawing them in? Are you unconsciously seeking chaos because your own inner life feels suppressed? Are you giving away your power because you haven't yet owned your strength? The shadow also shows up in judgment. If there's a type of person who deeply annoys you or triggers strong emotional reactions, it's worth exploring why. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That person might be showing you a part of yourself you've disowned. You don't hate them. You hate the reflection they hold up to you. But here's the hope. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is the gatekeeper to your wholeness. By recognizing the people who trigger or attract you in unusual ways, you can begin to uncover what your shadow wants you to see. And once you bring it into consciousness, it loses its grip. You no longer have to be ruled by unconscious desires or fears. You begin to attract people not from your wounds, but from your wholeness. Integrating the shadow isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. It's about embracing the messy, wild, passionate, and complex parts of who you are. When you do this inner work, you shift your energetic frequency. You stop attracting the same painful dynamics because you're no longer hiding from yourself. You begin to form connections that reflect your truth, not your trauma. So if you keep drawing in the same types of people, it's not just coincidence. It's your shadow guiding you toward something vital, not to punish you, but to wake you up, to bring back the parts of yourself that are waiting to be reclaimed. One of Carl Jung's most powerful and eye-opening ideas is the concept of projection. At its core, projection means seeing in others what actually exists within yourself, but unconsciously. It's a psychological defense mechanism, but more importantly, it's a map to understanding why you attract certain people again and again. When we project, we are unconsciously placing parts of our inner world onto someone else. These parts can be positive or negative, strengths, flaws, fears, or desires. Instead of recognizing them as our own, we believe they belong to the other person. So if you constantly find yourself drawn to people who are confident, nurturing, or even manipulative, it might be that these qualities are also present in you, but hidden from your awareness. Let's say you're someone who sees yourself as gentle, calm, and non-confrontational. Suddenly, you become intensely attracted to someone who is bold, outspoken, and unapologetically assertive. That attraction might feel magical, but also unsettling. Why? Because you've likely suppressed your own assertiveness. You've told yourself it's not who I am, and so your unconscious seeks it elsewhere. This person becomes a carrier of your lost trait. You're not just falling in love, you're falling in love with a piece of yourself. But projection isn't always pleasant. It often causes conflict, especially when we project what Jung called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we don't like or accept. Have you ever found someone irritating for reasons you couldn't explain? Maybe their laziness, arrogance, or neediness drives you crazy. That strong emotional reaction is a clue that something deeper is going on. Jung taught that what we strongly dislike in others is often a reflection of what we've rejected in ourselves. For example, someone who prides themselves on independence might constantly feel burdened by needy people. But beneath that frustration could be a hidden longing for connection they never learned to express. Instead of acknowledging it, they push it away and see it in others. That's projection at work. You're not just annoyed, you're looking into a mirror you don't want to recognize. This process happens in both romantic and non-romantic relationships. In fact, Jung believed that most of our early love interests are projections of our inner archetypes, like the Anima and Animus, the inner feminine and masculine energies. We project these inner figures onto others, mistaking our own psychic content for who the other person really is. That's why relationships can feel magical at first, like we've found the one. But as the projection fades, we start to see the person more clearly, and sometimes that reality is disappointing. So what does this have to do with attracting the same people? Everything. Until we become aware of what we're projecting, we will continue to attract people who reflect the same unconscious content. Whether it's the emotionally unavailable partner, the critical friend, or the chaotic family member, these individuals are showing us something within ourselves that we haven't yet owned. The relationship becomes a stage where inner conflicts are played out externally. The good news? Projection is not a life sentence. It's an invitation. When we recognize our projections, we begin to reclaim our lost parts. Instead of idealizing someone else's confidence, we can develop our own. Instead of blaming someone for being emotionally distant, we can explore our own fears of intimacy. Every projection, when seen clearly, becomes a path to personal growth. Jung encouraged us to withdraw the projections and integrate them. This means pulling back what we've placed on others and asking, how is this about me? It's not always easy. It requires humility, self-awareness, and emotional honesty. But when we do this work, we stop needing others to carry our unconscious baggage. We begin to see people for who they really are, not just for what they represent to us. And perhaps most importantly, we start to attract relationships that are more conscious, balanced, and real. We're no longer drawn to the same person in a different body because we're no longer unconsciously searching for our missing pieces in someone else. Projection is the mind's way of pointing us toward wholeness. If we pay attention, it shows us what we need to heal, embrace, or reclaim. The faces we're drawn to are not just other people. They are maps of our inner world, guiding us back to ourselves. At the heart of many of our relationship patterns is someone we rarely acknowledge: our inner child. According to Carl Jung, the inner child is not just a poetic idea. It's a living presence within us, shaped by early experiences, emotional wounds, unmet needs, and forgotten joys. Though we grow up physically, the inner child remains active in our unconscious, and if it carries unresolved pain, it quietly becomes the one choosing our relationships, drawing us again and again toward the same kind of people, often for reasons we don't fully understand. Think about it. If a child grows up feeling unloved unless they perform perfectly, that belief becomes embedded in their psyche. As an adult, they may keep attracting emotionally distant partners, because deep down, the inner child believes love must be earned, not freely given. Or maybe they grew up in chaos, where love felt unpredictable and unstable. Now, even in adulthood, they might feel most alive with someone who brings drama, confusion, or emotional highs and lows, not because they enjoy it, but because it feels familiar. To the inner child, familiarity equals safety, even if it hurts. Jung didn't speak of the inner child in those exact words, but his ideas about the unconscious, early experiences, and the way childhood shapes the psyche make the connection clear. He believed that our unconscious holds onto early impressions as emotional truths. These truths become the blueprint for how we see ourselves and others, even if they no longer reflect our current reality. So when we ask, "Why do I keep attracting the same kind of person?" we must also ask, what did my inner child learn about love, safety, and worth? Because those early lessons, especially the painful or confusing ones, create emotional expectations that we carry into adulthood. And since the unconscious is always seeking healing and resolution, it recreates situations where the old wounds can be triggered. The unconscious hopes that this time we'll make a different choice, respond in a new way, or finally recognize the pattern for what it is. But instead of recognizing, we often repeat. The inner child might be longing for the parent who never came, so it finds someone similar, hoping to rewrite the story. But instead of healing, we end up reliving the same hurt. That's not failure, it's a signal. Your inner child is trying to speak, to be seen, heard, and healed. What does healing the inner child look like in Jungian terms? It means bringing those unconscious emotional truths into the light. It means recognizing the moments when your reactions are bigger than the situation, when your fear of abandonment, criticism, or rejection feels overwhelming. Those are inner child moments. That's not your adult self reacting. It's the child within trying to protect you with outdated survival strategies. Jung believed that wholeness comes from integration. This includes integrating the child within you, not just the wounds, but also the joy, playfulness, and creativity that often get buried under years of pain. When you reconnect with your inner child, you start seeing your patterns not as curses, but as messages. You start understanding why you tolerated certain behaviors, why you kept chasing unavailable people, or why you feared intimacy or rejection. You start parenting yourself in the way you always needed. And here's the transformation. Once your inner child feels safe, heard, and supported by you, it no longer needs to seek that healing through others. You stop attracting people based on the needs of a wounded child and start forming relationships from the strength and clarity of your adult self. You stop searching for the person who will fix what your parents didn't. You become that healing presence for yourself. So if you keep finding yourself in the same emotional loop, consider that it's not your adult self making the choice. It's your inner child, still hoping to finally be loved the way they always needed. The good news is, it's never too late to meet that need from within. And once you do, the world outside begins to change. The same people no longer attract you. The same wounds no longer control you. Because the one who was really calling the shots, the inner child, has finally been seen and finally feels safe to let go. One of the most puzzling and painful patterns in relationships is our tendency to repeat the same experiences, often with different people, but with eerily similar outcomes. Carl Jung explored this through the lens of the unconscious mind, which he believed holds more influence over our lives than we realize. One of the unconscious mind's most mysterious tendencies is its desire to repeat unresolved experiences, especially those that were emotionally charged or traumatic. This is what modern psychology calls repetition compulsion, and in Jungian psychology, it becomes a key to understanding why we attract the same people over and over again. Imagine a person who grew up with a parent who was emotionally unavailable. That child learned to chase affection, to prove their worth, or to silence their needs in exchange for attention. As an adult, they may consciously crave a healthy, supportive relationship, but unconsciously, they're still drawn to the same emotional dynamic, a partner who is distant, unresponsive, or inconsistent. Why? Because the psyche is trying to recreate the original wound, not to suffer, but to finally resolve it. Jung believed that the psyche always seeks wholeness and healing. It tries to restore balance by bringing unconscious wounds into consciousness, often by repeating them in real life until we finally see them. This is not punishment, it's an opportunity. The unconscious keeps staging the same play until the actor, you, becomes conscious enough to change the script. But this repetition can feel like fate or bad luck. You might think, why do I always fall for the same kind of person? Or, why do I always end up feeling abandoned, controlled, or unworthy? The answer lies not in your choices alone, but in the emotional patterns encoded in your psyche. You are not choosing the same person consciously. You're being drawn into the same story unconsciously. And the ending won't change until you do. Let's say you keep attracting partners who are emotionally unavailable. Each time you might think, this one is different. But then the same cycle unfolds. You give too much, they pull away, and you feel rejected. Over time, the pattern becomes painful, but familiar. Jung would say that until this pattern becomes conscious, until you recognize the emotional script you're following, it will continue to repeat. The reason this is so powerful is because emotional memory is not stored in logic, it's stored in feeling. So even if you know better, your body and unconscious mind are still magnetized by what feels emotionally familiar, even if it's unhealthy. That's why people can walk away from one toxic relationship and unknowingly enter another with the same emotional flavor. It's not about weakness, it's about an inner system, still trying to resolve something that never had closure. Repetition compulsion is also connected to our deepest needs. As children, when a need goes unmet, like safety, affection, validation, we don't just forget it. We carry that need into adulthood, often trying to get it met by people who resemble the original source of the wound. We think, if I can make this person love me, I'll finally feel whole. But this often leads to disappointment because we're seeking healing from someone who isn't capable of giving it. So how do we break the cycle? Jung's answer was awareness. When you start noticing the emotional patterns that repeat in your relationships, when you connect your current pain to your past wounds, you reclaim your power. You stop expecting healing from outside and start turning inward. You begin to ask, what am I really trying to resolve here? What need is still unmet in me? What would it look like to meet that need myself instead of chasing it in others? Healing repetition compulsion doesn't mean you never feel pain again, but it does mean you stop being controlled by old stories. You begin to choose consciously rather than repeat unconsciously. You stop being pulled toward people who hurt you in familiar ways and start opening to those who support your growth. In Jungian terms, this is individuation, the journey toward becoming a whole and conscious person. When you face the patterns, own your wounds, and meet your needs with awareness, the compulsion to repeat dissolves. The past no longer chooses for you, you do. Carl Jung introduced two powerful inner figures that deeply influence how we relate to others, especially in romantic relationships, the Anima and the Animus. These are not just random psychological concepts. They are central archetypes in Jungian psychology that explain why we are magnetically drawn to certain people, even when those relationships don't serve our growth. Understanding these inner archetypes can help explain why we keep attracting similar types of partners again and again. The Anima is the inner feminine aspect in a man's psyche, and the Animus is the inner masculine aspect in a woman's psyche. These are not about gender roles or outer identity. They represent the unconscious aspects of our psychological balance. According to Jung, every person contains both masculine and feminine energies. These archetypes help us connect with our full potential, emotionally, creatively, and spiritually. But when they're not consciously integrated, we tend to project them onto others. This projection is powerful. For example, a man might meet a woman who appears mysterious, nurturing, emotionally deep, qualities that mirror his inner anima. He may instantly feel a deep, almost magical connection. He might even say, "She completes me." What's really happening is that his unconscious mind has projected his inner feminine onto her. She becomes the carrier of something sacred and deeply personal within him. The same happens when a woman meets a man who seems strong, confident, and intellectually sharp, traits reflecting her inner animus. She feels drawn to him, not just for who he is, but because he awakens a part of herself she hasn't fully explored. Now, here's where it becomes tricky. When these projections are unconscious, we confuse our inner world with the outer person. We don't see them as they are. We see them through the lens of our unmet needs and unclaimed traits. This creates an intense attraction, but also the potential for deep disappointment. Eventually, the projection fades. The person doesn't live up to the image we cast upon them. Conflict begins, and we're left wondering why the relationship changed so drastically. Jung believed this process is natural and necessary. The purpose of projection is not to find the perfect partner. It's to become aware of what lies within us. When the projection falls away, it's a sign that the psyche is ready for integration. In other words, it's time to reclaim those qualities for ourselves. Instead of needing someone else to be emotionally expressive, we learn to nurture our own emotions. Instead of depending on someone else's strength or logic, we develop those qualities internally. But when we don't do this inner work, we remain stuck in a cycle. We keep searching for our anima or animus out there, never realizing they live inside us. We go from one relationship to the next, always hoping the next person will finally complete us. This longing is not just for love, it's for wholeness. The relationships feel familiar because we're not meeting new people. We're meeting the same projection again and again. Jung emphasized that mature love begins when we stop projecting and start relating. That means seeing the other person not as an idealized figure, but as a real, flawed human being. It also means recognizing that the magic we felt in the beginning wasn't entirely about them. It was also about us, awakening to something within. This is where transformation begins. When we integrate the anima or animus, we become more whole. We stop looking for someone else to embody what we lack because we've found those qualities within ourselves. The needy, desperate pull toward a certain type fades. Our relationships become more conscious, balanced, and fulfilling, not because we've found the perfect partner, but because we've finally come home to ourselves. So if you keep attracting the same kind of partner, especially ones who stir deep emotional highs and lows, ask yourself, what inner figure am I projecting onto them? What qualities do they represent that I have not yet fully owned in myself? These questions don't just explain attraction. They open the door to true self-understanding and to the kind of love that doesn't just reflect your wounds, but reflects your wholeness. Carl Jung's idea of the shadow is one of his most transformative and haunting concepts. The shadow is everything within us that we've repressed, denied, or disowned, traits we believe are unacceptable, ugly, or not me. These could be anything from anger, selfishness, and envy to vulnerability, sensitivity, or even ambition. Because we don't consciously accept these parts, they are buried in the unconscious. But they don't stay quiet. Instead, they show up in our relationships, especially through attraction and conflict. When we say we keep attracting the same kind of people, often what we're really saying is that we're caught in a shadow dance. We're magnetized by people who carry parts of us we haven't yet integrated. If you're always drawn to controlling partners, it might be because your own assertiveness is locked away in your shadow. If you keep ending up with overly emotional or chaotic individuals, perhaps your own emotional depth has been suppressed for the sake of control or logic. The shadow doesn't just contain negative traits. It holds all the parts of ourselves we were taught not to be. Maybe you were told that being angry was wrong, so now you repress anger and are drawn to people who freely express theirs. Or maybe you were taught to always be strong and independent, so your shadow holds your neediness or your desire to be cared for. These buried traits don't disappear. They show up in others, and we either resent them or feel irresistibly pulled toward them. That's the dance. You reject something in yourself, and life places it right in front of you, embodied by someone else. At first, it might feel like attraction. Later, it can turn into frustration or even disgust. Jung believed this is not a mistake. It's the unconscious trying to wake you up. The people you attract are mirrors of your unclaimed self. Your shadow is trying to come home. This explains why certain people trigger us so intensely. That coworker who always brags, that friend who's too needy, that partner who won't commit, they stir something deep because they reflect traits we've disowned. You think you're reacting to them, but you're actually reacting to the part of yourself you've pushed into the dark. This doesn't mean you should tolerate bad behavior or stay in unhealthy relationships, but it does mean those reactions are clues. If you explore what exactly bothers or attracts you, and then ask, where is this in me? You begin to reclaim your shadow. That's what Jung called shadow integration. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean becoming what you hate. It means owning the capacity within yourself. You recognize that yes, you can be angry, needy, jealous, controlling, but also joyful, playful, nurturing, ambitious. You stop seeing these traits as shameful or alien and start recognizing them as part of the full spectrum of being human. And when you do that, something incredible happens. The patterns start to shift. You no longer need others to carry your shadow for you. You're no longer unconsciously seeking people to act out what you won't admit. You stop blaming others for your pain and start owning your power. And most importantly, you begin to relate from a place of wholeness rather than fragmentation. This is what Jung meant when he said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow is not your enemy. It's your path to self-understanding. And the relationships that reflect your shadow are not punishments. They are invitations. Each one says, "Look here. This is the part of you that wants to be seen." So the next time you feel that intense attraction or that deep irritation, pause and ask, "What is this revealing about me?" That simple question is the beginning of breaking the cycle, because when you make peace with your shadow, you stop dancing with it in the form of the same painful relationships. You begin instead to relate from a place of true self-awareness. One of Carl Jung's most fascinating ideas that sheds light on why we keep attracting the same types of people is the principle of synchronicity. Synchronicity refers to meaningful coincidences, moments when events align in a way that feels deeply significant, even though they are not causally connected in the usual sense. For Jung, these moments are more than mere chance. They reveal an underlying order to our experiences, especially in relationships and personal growth. When you notice that you keep meeting similar people or finding yourself in recurring relationship patterns, it might feel like a frustrating coincidence. But Jung would encourage you to see this as synchronicity at work, a symbolic message from the unconscious mind, guiding you toward awareness and healing. Imagine meeting someone who unexpectedly stirs up the same feelings as a past partner or mirrors unresolved issues you thought you'd moved past. The timing may seem odd or the connection random, but from Jung's perspective, it's an invitation. The universe, or more precisely, your unconscious, brings these people and experiences to you because they carry essential lessons or reminders. Synchronicity connects our inner world with our outer world. When a certain person enters your life repeatedly, or when a relationship dynamic keeps showing up, it's not just about the other person. It's about what that experience symbolizes inside you. These moments are like puzzle pieces clicking into place, revealing parts of your psyche that have been hidden or ignored. For example, you might be unconsciously working through feelings of abandonment. Then, just when you least expect it, someone who triggers those fears appears. It's not random, it's synchronicity signaling that your unconscious mind is still processing these emotions, urging you to bring them into consciousness. Jung also believed synchronicity helps us move along the path of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole. Each meaningful encounter, especially those that feel like repetitions, serves as a stepping stone for inner growth. The people who come into our lives are often messengers, reflecting parts of ourselves we need to acknowledge, integrate, or transform. What makes synchronicity so intriguing is that it challenges the purely logical cause and effect way we usually see life. Instead of viewing relationship patterns as bad luck or mistakes, Jung invites us to see them as meaningful signs, part of a deeper dialogue between our conscious mind and the vast unconscious. Recognizing synchronicity requires openness and reflection. It means paying attention to the feelings, symbols, and timing of your encounters. Why did you meet this person now? What emotions or memories do they evoke? What inner process might they be highlighting? When you start asking these questions, relationships stop being random events and become profound mirrors of your soul's journey. This perspective also shifts the way we deal with frustration in relationships. Instead of feeling stuck or victimized by repeating patterns, you can see them as messages, opportunities to grow, heal, and move closer to self-understanding. In practice, embracing synchronicity means tuning in to your intuition and emotions. It means listening for the subtle signals your unconscious sends through your experiences, and it means trusting that these meaningful coincidences are guiding you toward deeper awareness and healthier relationships. So next time you notice a pattern or find yourself drawn to the same kind of person, pause and consider, could this be synchronicity? Is this encounter asking you to look inside, to understand what part of you still needs attention or healing? When you approach your relationships with this mindset, You transform the repetitive cycle from a trap into a gateway, a chance to rewrite your story and finally attract the love and connection you truly deserve. Carl Jung saw human life as a quest toward individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated person. Central to this journey is the idea that our relationships are not just about companionship or romance, but about reflecting and facilitating our inner growth. When you find yourself attracting the same types of people repeatedly, it's often your unconscious psyche pointing toward unresolved parts of your inner world that are seeking attention and healing. Jung believed that the human psyche is made up of multiple layers, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, and that true wholeness arises when these layers are recognized and integrated. Our relationships act like mirrors, showing us the aspects of ourselves we either embrace or deny. This means the people you attract embody parts of your psyche, especially those you are not yet fully conscious of. For instance, if you keep attracting partners who challenge your independence, perhaps you have an inner conflict about autonomy versus connection. If your relationships repeatedly involve themes of abandonment or control, these reflect your inner fears or unresolved wounds. Jung taught that these recurring patterns are not random. They are invitations to look deeper within. Why does this happen? Because the unconscious mind wants to heal through experience. By attracting people who reflect your inner state, your psyche offers you opportunities to face your fears, embrace your shadows, and reclaim lost parts of yourself. Each relationship becomes a stage where you act out unconscious dramas, but also where you can begin to write new endings. This quest for wholeness explains why simply changing partners often doesn't break the cycle. The same inner dynamics follow you from one relationship to the next. Unless the inner work is done, unless you become aware of your unconscious patterns and start integrating them, the external circumstances remain the same. Jung's approach emphasizes consciousness as the key to transformation. When you bring unconscious motivations, fears, and desires into your awareness, you gain the power to choose differently. You stop being controlled by invisible forces and begin directing your life with intention. This doesn't mean relationships will be perfect or easy. The process of individuation is lifelong and often challenging, but it does mean that relationships can shift from repeating old wounds to becoming fertile ground for growth. Instead of attracting the same people out of unconscious need, you attract those who support your evolving self. Jung also highlighted the importance of self-love and self-acceptance in this journey. The more whole you become inside, the less you look outside for validation or completion. Your relationships begin to reflect your inner harmony rather than your inner conflicts. Ultimately, the quest for wholeness is a sacred journey, a path toward becoming fully yourself. The people who enter your life are not accidents or random matches. They are part of this unfolding story. By embracing this perspective, you reclaim your power to transform patterns, heal wounds, and create relationships that truly nourish your soul. So, if you notice yourself attracting the same kinds of people, remember, this is not a curse or a punishment. It's a call to look inward. It's your psyche's way of guiding you on the path to wholeness, inviting you to become the person capable of experiencing love that is conscious, free, and deeply fulfilling. After exploring the many layers of Carl Jung's theories, repetition, compulsion, projections of the anima and animus, the shadow, synchronicity, and the quest for wholeness, the big question remains: how do you actually break the cycle of attracting the same people again and again? Jung's insights offer not only understanding but also practical paths toward transformation. Breaking these unconscious patterns requires conscious effort, self-reflection, and courageous inner work. The first step is awareness. You need to recognize and accept that these patterns exist. This means paying close attention to your relationship history, not just who you chose, but how you felt in those relationships, what kept repeating, and what emotional triggers appeared. Journaling or therapy can help bring these patterns into conscious view, because you cannot change what you don't see. Next, explore your inner projections. Ask yourself what qualities you may be projecting onto others from your anima or animus. Are you idealizing someone based on unconscious needs? Are you reacting to your shadow being reflected in your partner? Becoming aware of these projections helps you see people as they truly are, instead of as carriers of your inner expectations or wounds. Then work on integrating your shadow. This is often the hardest part because it means facing parts of yourself you might prefer to ignore, but it is crucial for growth. Start by noticing what qualities in others bother or attract you intensely, and reflect on how those traits exist in you. Through self-compassion and honest reflection, you reclaim these parts, reducing the unconscious need to reenact them in others. Another essential practice is to embrace the idea of synchronicity, to pay attention to the meaningful coincidences and lessons in your encounters. Instead of rushing to fix or avoid situations, reflect on what these moments are teaching you about yourself and your journey toward wholeness. Building a strong sense of self-love and boundaries is also vital. When you value yourself and your needs, you become less likely to tolerate relationships that replicate old wounds. You start choosing partners who resonate with your authentic self, rather than those who fill unconscious gaps. Lastly, be patient and gentle with yourself. Change does not happen overnight. Breaking deep-seated patterns requires time, practice, and often the support of others, whether friends, mentors, or therapists. Celebrate small steps forward and maintain a mindset of curiosity rather than judgment. Jung's teachings remind us that relationships are not just external events, but reflections of our inner world. By doing the inner work to become conscious of these patterns, you reclaim your power to choose differently. You stop being a passive player in the same old dramas and become the author of your own love story. In the end, breaking the cycle isn't just about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person, whole, aware, and ready for a relationship that supports your fullest growth and deepest connection. This transformation is the heart of Jung's vision and the key to finally attracting the love you truly deserve.